Hi, my name is Melissa Barlas. I'm the owner and founder of Conveyed. I run a conveyancing law firm, and we are on the Online Prosperity Show with Prosper. And you're going to get some really valuable free education on tips and tricks that you can be applying when you're buying your first home in Australia.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. I'm your host, Prosper Tarovinga, and today we have a very special guest that's joining us. So, she's an award-winning Melbourne conveyancing lawyer and sole practitioner of the year 2023 at the Lawyers Weekly Australian Law Awards, and the founder and director of Conveyed, a leading conveyancing firm servicing Victoria and Queensland. She's also the dynamic host of the First Home Show podcast. Please join me in welcoming the one and only Melissa Barlas. Now, Melissa, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I've just come back from Sydney yesterday and now back in Melbourne as we speak. And enjoyed a short trip with my fiance after a conference. So I'm back and getting into the swing of things now. Yeah.
Absolutely, and congratulations are in order. Have you guys set a date yet? I thought I heard something along the lines of March 2025.
Yes, 1st of March. So very exciting. Lot of planning to do.
Absolutely. Have you ever heard of what's called the Ides of March?
No, what's that? The
Well,
Eid of March.
that's something that you're gonna have to
I
figure
gotta look at it. How
out.
did you
Now,
say it? Eids of
the
March?
Ides of March, yes. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it well, so it's called the Ides of March. Anyway, now
I've just written it
Melissa,
down.
obviously, there's exciting stuff going on in your life right now. Congratulations are in order, but there's also exciting things that our audiences are waiting for right now. But before we obviously jump into that, could you just maybe step in a little with a bit of legalese just so we can clear the air? So that we are braced for a smooth landing with this show today.
Yes, sure. So I can go into, a little bit about who I am, I guess, and what my business does, if that's the best
Fantastic.
place to start.
Yes, what I was asking is for you to just give us a legal disclaimer, because obviously whoever's watching this should make
Oh,
that.
of course. Thank you. No, so yeah, of course, it's always general advice whenever, discussing tips or some sort of guidance during the podcast. It's of course intended to be general advice only. So if you are needing some legal assistance to deal with the matter that you're involved with, of course, you need to get independent legal advice. And if it is conveyancing related, we can of course assist you. But general advice only.
Absolutely. And thank you so much. That's a tick for my legal department because it's one of those things that they always want me to make sure we've got that covered. Well, now that we've got the legalese out of the way, Melissa, it's fantastic to have you here. I mean, your dedication to making conveyancing process smoother and more efficient, especially for the Gen Y buyers and sellers, is truly inspiring. And I can't wait to dive into our conversation and just learn a little bit more about your journey, your methods, and insights. Plus, I'm sure our visitors and viewers today are eager to discover why they should be considering to do business with you and your innovative firm. Now, just to get us started, Melissa, tell us a little bit about your journey thus far, and what got you started in this legal pursuit.
Yeah. Thanks so much. And thank you for having me on. If there's anyone that I can help impact their lives through what we're talking about, then we're obviously doing the right thing. But so the journey has been amazing, to say the least. I've been a sponge for the last 2.5 years, which is how long I've been running my conveyancing law firm for. But before doing that, I was working in private practice as a property lawyer at a generalist law firm. And I was actually uh, working for law firms for a good 10 years before starting up my own practice in the middle of COVID, actually. So it was July 2020. No, 2021. Sorry, I'm just trying to think back. Um, and uh, and it was a blessing because it gave me time, some downtime that I needed to really, focus on my business plan, get my uh, accounts and whatnot up and running to start intaking clients. Um, but before starting my firm, yeah, I'll be candid with you. I had suffered a lot of burnout where I was working previously. Um, and so following that, I felt that I needed a break just to evaluate what I wanted to do, whether I wanted to continue working for anyone else or do my own thing. And eventually, as I said to myself, well, I know my service, I know how to help people, and I've been doing what I've been doing for the last 10 years as a property lawyer. So why not just start out on my own and see how I go? Maybe there's things that I can do better. And of course, I was taught what not to do where I was working prior. So, and then, yeah, the rest is history. So, yeah, July 21, I, yeah, started everything up. I finished off where I was working in March, had that little bit of a break, took in my first client in September 21. And from there on, it's just been growth after growth after growth, not just business wise, but personally as well. You learn a lot about yourself when you take that leap of faith and start working for yourself, as you would know, Prosper. It's a big risk that you take. Um, and yeah, and so, from previous year to now, we've grown 69% as our revenue growth rate. So it's been amazing. But it's been even more amazing to be able to help people with what I do. I love it. I wouldn't look back. It's a hustle at the best of times, for sure. But it's so rewarding to do things your way, and to help people the way you want to. And the way I see it is, I can't change the world, but I can change a person's life through what I'm doing. I can change their world, and that's what that's one of the values that we uphold as a law firm with every property settlement that we do. So yeah, it's deeper than a transaction.
I like that. I like that. And if you would understand and also just, bring the human in the legal side of things, what you guys do is afford people one of the first rungs of, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is, a place to call home. So once that is
Mm.
solved, then that means their life and everything else that comes along with it, is actually well thought out, and it actually works out perfectly for them. Now, Melissa, when I've got girls, like I've got two girls that I'm looking after here. They agreed to be my kids, so let's
That's a
take
good
it that
start.
way. All right. So I watched them play, and one of them wants to be a vet, and another one wants to be a princess. And I'm just wondering what it was like for you growing up. Was law what was the aspiration, or did that just come about as a matter of growth?
Yeah, it's a good question. It definitely was not something that I wanted to do when I finished my high school. I actually had no idea what I wanted to do when I finished. And my father was saying to me at the time, I think it was like 2000. Ooh, when was it? When did I finish school? 2007, I think it was. Um, and he was like, "Why don't you just do human resource management?" And I was like, "Okay, I'll do that." You know, so I did a certificate 4 and diploma, and I excelled at that, and it got me into an early offer at Vic Uni to do human resource management as a bachelor.
Right.
So bachelor in business, majoring in HR. So I ended up doing that, and there were a couple of legal subjects that I really enjoyed, and I did well with because I really took an interest in doing those subjects. Um, but yeah, so from that point on, I decided I'd just go in and do a Master of Laws at a Juris Doctor at Monash University following that. And but yeah, hadn't always been law, but I feel that I have been conditioned from a young age to value property. My father was a bricklayer for a lot of years. We grew up in with humble beginnings, so to speak. Um, we grew up in, between the suburbs of Footscray and Sunshine, and that a lot has changed in those areas since the time that I grew up when I was younger. And this is for anyone listening, this is in Victoria, so it's in the west of Victoria. Um, and we had tough times. I've seen my parents go through some really tough times, and lots of uncertainty in terms of where we lived, how we would live week to week. So that's probably informed or influenced, uh, I guess, my decision to work hard and be resilient and have grit, and keep pushing forward as well. But with property, yeah, my father was a bricklayer for a long time, and so we would always talk about property at the dinner table, because it wasn't something that we had, it was something that my dad used to work on sites for many years, but it was always a dream for us, and we would always go and drive to different jobs that my dad did and he would say, "Oh, I did that fence, or I did that roof, or I installed that thing," and so I guess, yeah, with the discussions and the things that we did, then the discussions that we had with property and showing me property has made me feel like that's sort of where I needed to be in life, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So yeah, really conditioned from a young age and conditioned to work hard from a young age as well.
I like that. Now that
Yeah.
you've put it out that way, I'm now gonna have to look after these two in and lead by example, and also show them maybe possible ways and paths that they could take in order for them to have, a fruitful future. So that's amazing, that you had the influence from your parents and things of that nature. But when you then started working, it was like you said, in a generalist sort of firm, and obviously maybe there was so much that was expected of you that it may have led you to that burnout that you alluded to earlier. Could that have been part of that, or was that just because you were trying to do so many things and maybe you didn't quite find the path as yet?
Yeah, no, definitely. If it wasn't for that experience of dealing with mental health battles and dealing with burnout, I probably wouldn't be sitting before you having this conversation as a business owner. I think it really helped propel me towards that future. Um, so yeah, definitely. Yeah, hadn't had the best luck of, having the best mentors in the legal industry at that time. So I've really had to go out and discover myself and connect with a lot of really amazing business owners to learn how to be a leader, not just manage, but develop leadership skills with my business. But yeah, look, it's definitely impacted my decision to go out on my own for sure. And it's taught me, you know, things that I need to be doing as a business owner to help people that work for me as well, and making sure that they're okay and not, overworked and not um, suffering from any mental health battles, because that's something that I'm really passionate about.
Absolutely. And you chose a different demographic to work with, which is Gen Y. And I think they're also called the millenniums, or the me generation. What made you choose this genre of people?
Well, I'm a millennial myself, so I kind of understand how we like to do things. Um, and I wanted to break away from just the, I just wanted to break away from, I guess, that traditional dinosaur type of conveyancing business model that a lot of people are used to seeing, like the conveyancer up the road that has that old office with the papers stacked on the desk, and it creates a perception. And I wanted to steer away from that. But going into starting my own business, one of the first exercises that I did was understand who's my target market. So if you don't know who your target market is, you don't know how to run your messaging. You don't know what your messaging is. And knowing your target market informs everything else that you do with marketing, with communication. So for me, I really had to understand that on a really deep level. And I needed to ask myself, who do I love working with? What sort of clients? If I can look back and go, okay, I've dealt with commercial clients, I've dealt with developers, I've dealt with retirees, I've dealt with, mums and dads. Like, who is it that I actually really enjoy working with and can relate to on a deeper level? And I found that it was the millennial market. That's not to say I don't service everyone. Of course, I service any client that wants to work with me. They don't have to be a millennial. That's just who my messaging is geared towards, right? So it's about niching and differentiating as a business. So who do I do that, steer that towards? It's the millennial market with my messaging, because I guess that's the ideal client that we want to attract. That's who we've identified as our ideal client. So yeah, like I said, I can relate to them. And us millennials, we are the DIY generation. We're the ones that are on our phones. We're busy. We have careers. We have babies on the way. We have young families needing to upsize. We are busy people. So we want someone that is definitely um, uh, has a digital practice for sure. A conveyancing law firm that values saving time and making things really seamless and convenient. That's exactly what we do with our business model, because that accommodates that target market. And our clients love it. And we have lots of FAQs on our website, lots of blogs, because we are the DIY generation. And you could probably say the same for Gen Z as well, except Gen Z is on probably another level with that. But we love to just look on a website, be able to click, get a quote, and leave an inquiry, or get a quote through an online process, or be able to read stuff up ourselves because we want to know what's happening. So everything's designed towards that target market, and we haven't looked back, and it's enabled us to actually attract the right client, which is great.
Absolutely. And just the appearance of your website, it's really whiz bang, so to speak. So many technological aspects on there. I mean, right now there's Melissa talking to somebody who's on the website right now. You've incorporated video, you've incorporated a very technologically driven sort of approach. Can you maybe also share some examples of how you've leveraged technology that actually aligns with the type of client that you're working with, so that these millennials can also come around and experience the arcade that you've created on your website?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can listen to our podcast on our website first and foremost. So there's some audio content on there for people to be able to do that. It's called the First Home Show. So it's actually geared towards people that are first home buyers. And the people that aren't first home buyers also get lots of value from that as well. So they're 10-minute long episodes, really short and to the point. And it's really great. And the other thing that we're really working on at the moment, which is exciting and it's almost about to launch, is we're completely automating our entire onboarding process. So from the time you go on our website to the time you become a client, that's an entirely digitalized process, not dehumanizing the process in any way. I just want to make that point, but automating it in such a way that makes it really seamless and easy for you to just engage our services, which is really exciting. So that's almost about to launch, which I'm excited about. But once clients engage us, it's We do like to leverage technology to make the process really convenient for our clients. So whether that's by way of, e-signatures on documents that they can do on their mobile phones when they're on the way to work or when they're at home, doing ID checks as part of a conveyancing process from the convenience of their workplace or anywhere they are at home or anywhere they are, full stop. It's really designed to promote that remote way of doing things, I suppose. And also just automating some of the content that goes out to clients so that our service is really consistent across the board. And that's really something that I'm very hyper focused on, is consistency and high quality, so that we can grow and scale the way we need to as a business and be able to service more and more clients over time.
Absolutely. And I think leverage is what you have actually mastered, because if you're creating, those 10-minute episodes of your episode, people can be listening while on their way to work or while they're commuting without them actually engaging, or having to make an appointment and sit down with someone.
Absolutely.
Which they don't have time for. So,
That's right. And it's a way of being able to give people free education, because I'm really passionate about education. So for us, I want to be able to give the client more than just a conveyancing service. I want to give them a holistic experience where they feel like they're informed and extremely supported from before they even engage us, So it's that's something that's really important to us.
Absolutely, because right about now, a lot of millennials are either getting into their first home or they're being involved in the transfer of property from, the older generation to them and things of that nature. So that could actually be a daunting process. So what do you sort of suggest will be the first thing that people can do in order to get started working with you?
Yeah, so they can go on our website as the starting point. So it's just www.conveyed.com.au. It's really simple. And they can leave an inquiry on our website, and we're generally really quick in terms of giving you a call back to run through your needs. I feel like it's important not to dehumanize the process, but to be available to clients, to have a chat to them about what their real needs are, and explain to them what the process is going to look like. So they just leave an inquiry, we'll give them a call, and then we'll send out a quote to our clients that they can then accept and engage us to represent them on their next property purchase or sale. So that's one way they can do it. We've also got our 1300 number on our website. People can just give us a call. So our listener can just go on the website, call the number. You'll usually get either myself or my colleague Simab to answer your call, and we both have lots of conveyancing experience. So what's great about us is when you speak to someone, they actually know what they're talking about. It's not just a person from a call center or someone from overseas. It's actually a team that is combined has half a century of conveyancing experience. So just to give our customers confidence. So yeah, starting point, go on the website, and then you'll know what to do from there. Contact us. There's a contact us section on the menu. And and leave your details and we'll get in touch.
Absolutely. I quite like that, because I remember one of my first clients was a conveyancer, and they were the type that were in a dingily lit room full of cases, those steel cabinets with files after files and files on top of them. And they even had an old typewriter that they used to use still in that office, meaning nobody had done anything. And the biggest printer I've ever seen in my entire life, because I think in there, that's where they were printing all those documents that filled up those filing cabinets. And I actually joked with them, and I was like, you would never run out of things to do. If you don't have stuff to do, you'd have to organize these files alphabetically and then maybe print more papers to fill them up with, and your day is done. And they're like, you know what? That's actually my day. So I didn't realize that that's what they were doing. But you seem to have really modernized this experience for conveyancing. It's no longer just one of those things that you just send paperwork somewhere and somebody sends back something stamped and approved or things of that nature, right? You literally have put the human into this experience. Now, how do you then balance your demanding career with also some of your personal interests? Because I've noticed on your website, you're a dog lover, you're a foodie, you love 80s music, and things of that nature. And now you're also going to be starting a family of your own.
Oh, you should have seen the way we were dancing in the car on the way back home from Sydney. We didn't, because we drove up and back, and we
Right.
had a really cool 80s mix on Spotify. And I thought to probably record it and put it out, but my fiance said it was just too embarrassing, so he wouldn't let me. Um, but yeah, so how do we balance it? Structure really helps, I have to say. And I've had to really reevaluate that in recent times, actually, to build more structure in my day. Because as you start to grow, you feel more and more pain points, and then it cuts into your time. So then you have to reevaluate and go, okay, where can I delegate this? How can I restructure my day so that I'm only doing meetings at this time and finishing off at that time? And so when do I fit in exercise? So having a really structured day plan really helps. Sounds boring, but it's actually gold. Like if you can really work out what time do I do admin? What time do I do marketing and networking? What time do I do learning and product development? If you just make that consistent, you'll probably finish off a lot earlier than you think in a day. So that helps me balance my time. I try not to work on weekends. And in fact, I really encourage anyone that's listening, that's a business owner, encourage your people that work with you to not work late and be home with their family, because one of our values as a business is work-life balance. So we are completely remote business. So I work from home, my team members work from home, um, and we love it because we can be really present with our family. Like I've got my desk set up, and my fiance's desk is next to me if he's ever around. And if I need to fire up the laptop in the evening, he might be around while I'm doing that. So we're still present with one another in that sense. And there's been times where I might send my team a message of what I'm doing just after work, whether it's, going for a walk or what I'm having for dinner, just to promote the importance of work-life balance, and that informs your culture as well as a business, right? You can do little things like that, sharing what you're doing at 6 o'clock at night when you've knocked off after 5:30. That's not to do with work, but it's to do with leisure. You're actually filtrating that culture to everyone else in your business. So that's just a little handy tip. But yeah, working remotely helps, structure helps, and not working on weekends helps as well.
Absolutely, because if you're 100% digital, like you say, you know what I mean, you don't have that many overheads, which a lot of those stationed, legal firms have, which then means they have to then pass on whatever expenses they're going through in order to keep their lights on to the customer,
Yeah.
which then entails the service becomes a little bit more expensive. So in comparison
And
to,
also just to add around that, sorry if I can
yeah.
just mention as well, sometimes what cuts into people's work-life balance is lack of delegation and feeling like you have to do everything yourself. If you're listening and you are a business owner or you work in a position where you've got a lot of responsibility and you've got the decision-making power to potentially delegate low-end tasks, or things that are repetitive that you don't really think you should be doing, um, it's okay to let go. And so long as you've got proper systems in place to train, and you've documented those systems, you can easily have those tasks that you shouldn't be doing or don't want to do to have other people do to free up your time so you can leave earlier. So that's another handy tip.
I like that because you can't climb the ladder of success with your hands full. You know what I mean? You gotta, like you say, let go to a lot of things in order for you to then grasp whatever is coming through. While
Yep.
since you are dishing them tips out. What sort of tips do you have, especially for the Gen Y first home buyers? And I think this is the sort of time when a lot of people are looking to purchase their first property. I know there's a lot of information out there, there's incentives here and there. So some people just get really caught up in the nitty-gritty of what's being offered without actually looking at the right information that they need to be looking at. So maybe you've got a few tips that you want to maybe share with us that people should be on the lookout for, in order for them to, have great settlements.
You know what? I've got some real handy tips that I love sharing to first home buyers. So firstly, this is a practical tip. Don't, in terms of timing the market, never try and time the market. Don't wait for interest rates to drop to go into the market. Okay, that's a bad strategy. I'll just say that quite bluntly. It's a bad strategy. Because when interest rates drop, you get more competition, and over time, property appreciates. So the longer you wait, the more expensive it's going to get. It is literally as simple as that. So try not to rely on interest rates as a reason for going into the market, because there's a lot of people out there that listen to the media, and the media is always hyping on about interest rates, and that's informing people's decisions on when they go into the market. So tune out a little bit in that respect, and go into the market when you can. Make a start. But if growing your wealth is a strategy for you, make sure you're investing in the right type of property. So it's investing in the right type of property. So you can use buyers advocates, for example, to help you with that process. And I can introduce you, if you leave an inquiry with us, I can actually introduce you to great buyers advocates depending on what your needs are and which areas you're looking for. But that to one side, at a very general high level, house and land, for example, that can appreciate a lot more quickly and a lot more than, say, going in and buying an apartment in a high-rise building as your first investment. If you're trying to build wealth over a 5 or 10-year period, probably 10 years, what you want to, reasonable period of time to work with. If you go into an apartment, buy an apartment first, you're not going to have what's called equity. You're not going to have as much equity in your property to set yourself up for the second one. And equity, just at a real general level, that's just the bridging gap between what the value of your property is versus your loan. It goes into a bit more depth, but effectively, whatever the gap is that the bank allows for to use to put as a deposit for your second property, that is greatly diminished based on buying a property that's not going to appreciate in value very much, like a high-rise apartment in a high-rise building versus, house and land in a suburban area. So just have a think about that for yourself. If you want a broader conversation with me about that, I'm most happy to speak to you about your strategy. I'm by no means a buyer's advocate or anything, but I know enough to be able to sort of guide you in the right direction. So feel free to have a chat to me about that. But that's the first thing I would say. From a legal standpoint, always get the contract reviewed. So when you buy a property for the first time, you're going to get a document called a contract. You're going to get, if you're buying in Victoria, for example, you'll get a Section 32, which is a document that discloses lots of legal things about the property by law that the seller needs to disclose to you by law. So we review both documents and we give you advice about that before you buy. So pay careful attention, take note to do that. If it's your first property, it's going to be the biggest financial decision of your life. And you don't want to take that for granted because you don't know what you don't know. So I'm here to tell you what you need to know. And what you need to know is get the contract reviewed before you buy. If it's an auction property, you've got to get it done regardless, whether there's a likelihood of success in buying the property or not. If it's a privately sold property, otherwise known as a property not being sold at auction, and the vendor's willing to accept a pre-auction offer by you, for example, speak to the agent and gauge if the seller is prepared to accept your offer. And if they are, that is the perfect time to send us the contract to review, because at least you're in with a chance and you're not wasting your money on a contract review at that stage. Okay. So from a timing perspective, that is the perfect time to send us the contract. And when you submit an offer, don't sign the contract as part of that. Submitting an offer can be done in an email. It can be done over the phone. It can be done by marking up the contract itself. Don't care which way you do it, just don't sign it until we've reviewed it. So that's the golden rule. So I hope that that tip has helped you from a timing and a legal perspective. And then second to that, again, if the vendor's prepared to accept your offer or you're looking to attend an auction, make sure you get a building and pest inspection of the property, ideally before you buy. Because that can actually inform what offer you're prepared to make, depending on whether there's any issues with the structural integrity of the property or if there's any, major pest infestation. So having a building and pest inspection report is really handy in that respect. And also I would even go as far as suggesting getting a plumber to check the drainage, because a building inspector doesn't necessarily check that, and getting an electrician to check the electrical safety of the property. All that informs what sort of price you'd be prepared to pay, but it also confirms what the condition is like when you buy the property, so that if the condition even changes before settlement being the date that the property is transferred to you, if the condition of the property is changed before settlement, you've actually got proof of what the condition was like beforehand. So those reports are super valuable when it comes to buying a property and buying safely. So they're my top tips for our listener. And if you've missed writing down notes on that, you can always reverse back and re-listen to those tips again.
Oh, absolutely. Wow. That was gold in and of itself, Melissa. And so many people would pay so much money to get that sort of information. And I like how you've really outlined it. Not only are you proficient in the legal side of things, but you're a property person yourself. And, it's evident that you really are passionate about helping to educate others through, their property purchase, because most people make this mistake, and now it's a mistake they have to live with for the rest of their lives. And if they had somebody like you right at the start, you would have actually helped them, make the best decisions. And like you say, it's
absolutely,
it's one of those things.
Another great decision is making sure you also base. So a lot of this comes from a lot of misinformation that comes to buyers' ways, especially from real estate agents and other property professionals. Your first person you're going to speak to is probably either your mortgage broker or real estate agent, probably the real estate agent more than anyone, because that's who you're going to go up to when you're looking for a property, And then sometimes they'll say, I'll introduce you to a conveyancer. Don't worry about going to this person because this person's really cheap. And that advice is not very sound advice. If someone ever says that to you, number one, the relationship may be tainted between the real estate agent and a conveyancer, so you don't know if they're acting in your best interests. And number two, cheap is not always best. In fact, in my industry, you get what you pay for. And it's a very simple concept. Conveyancing fees are a very small fraction of what you'd be paying for a property. And any reasonable person understands that. So you should never, ever, as a strategy, try and go for the cheapest conveyancer. When you Google conveyancers, a lot of the ones on the top will be the ones that say 550 conveyancer, 770 conveyancer, 990 conveyancer, because that's the golden language for Google SEO purposes, but it's not necessarily the best approach to take because quality matters when you're making the biggest financial decision of your life. And you should really be basing your decision to work with a property professional based on their experience and how comfortable you are with their expertise and actually just working with them. So if you call a conveyancer, just get a feel for their expertise, see how comfortable you are with them. Do they know what they're talking about, or is it a team in Manila, Philippines that's answering the phone call? That's that could be a red flag. That can inform whether an actual seasoned professional will be available to you when times get tough or if you need someone on short notice. So that's another practical tip that I would recommend, because you don't know what you don't know unless someone like myself, a seasoned property lawyer, explains that to you.
Absolutely. Now, so many people would be under so much pressure. Like you say, this is probably the only property transaction they would ever do, because we would know stats in Australia. Very few people go past property number 2, 3, and 4. So not a lot of people are doing these kind of transactions in their everyday activity. It's not like Afterpay
Yeah, it
where
accounts for only 2% of our population that go beyond the 4 or 5 property mark. Yep.
absolutely, right? So in essence, not so many of these transactions are happening, and the information that a lot of people are receiving is either outdated or it's borderline dangerous and detrimental to, the wealth building side of things that you were talking about. Maybe you can walk us through some really doozies, things that you have saved people from, when they were about to sign, and you come across it and you're like, this is a red flag, do not cross past this. I mean, you don't have to necessarily mention names. I know lawyers don't want to divulge information and things like that, but you could just give us a general thing that you can come across in a property, conveyancing practice and be like, hey, you were almost about to buy a lemon.
Yeah, absolutely. I can think of so many scenarios. First one that comes to my head is, and I'll describe it. This actually happened. It was a customer came up to me, and thankfully they came to us to get their contract reviewed, because if that hadn't happened, they would be in a very big pickle at the moment. But effectively, they were interested in buying an apartment in a high-rise building in Docklands, which is a suburb in Melbourne. And we inspected the contract and the Section 32, and they were prepared to sign. So they had really progressed with their negotiations, and it was only hinging on us giving the client advice as to whether he would actually go ahead and sign the contract to buy the property. So he was very close, because he was getting a lot of pressure from the agent, and there were other buyers coming in as well, putting in offers. So we did a review on short notice, a quality review on short notice, and we identified that the building was littered with highly flammable combustible cladding. So for those that don't know what that is, it is effectively, cladding is the sheet material, the metal sheet material that gets applied on buildings to beautify it. And it's illegal to use flammable cladding. So the actual material has like a think of it as 3 layers. So you've got the sheet metal on top. On one layer is sheet metal. In the middle, you've got the cladding material. Oh, sorry, the flammable material, or it shouldn't be flammable. And then on top of that, you've got like a metal sheet again. So that's a really bad explanation, because I'm not a builder, but that's effectively it. Anyway, so you shouldn't be using flammable combustible cladding. You should only be using non-combustible cladding. And so this building was littered with the combustible stuff. And we discovered in the Section 32 that there was a building order issued by the council, who had gotten the Victorian Building Authority to go out, because the Victorian Building Authority has a task force that can go out and inspect buildings for this kind of stuff. And there was a building order requiring the owners corporation to rectify it. So to replace all the cladding with non-combustible cladding. And that cost a lot of money. So what was disclosed was that the owners corporation was going to start raising special levies from the current financial year onwards, to the tune of an extra $9,500 a year of owners corporation fees
to pay for their
each
mistake.
person that would own an apartment in that building.
Whoa.
So the levies were sort of sitting at about the 5K mark, which is not unusual for a high-rise apartment building, because there's a lot of amenities that come with such a building. But having to pay an extra 9.5 on top of that worth of special levies, extra levies, was a major risk. So we advised the client about that, because this owners corporation was raising those levies to be able to fund the rectification works, but also to take the builder to court. So they need to raise money. There wasn't enough money in the pool that they already accumulate by way of standard levies. They needed to raise more money to do those activities. So the only way they can do that is charging the lot owners, the apartment owners, fees, extra fees to do that. And that is part and parcel of owning an apartment. So you've got to be very careful about which one you go for. So we reviewed the contract, we advised them about that additional cost that was going to happen, and straight away they just moved on to another property. And they were incredibly thankful by the end, because they said, if you hadn't actually given us that advice, or if we'd gone with just maybe even just a standard conveyance, so that, or a cheap conveyance, so that may not have time to really properly review, we probably would have bought a lemon and be forced to have to pay all these extra running costs for owning the property, which we wouldn't have been able to afford. So that was a really good win for the customer. And another scenario that I've come up with, and this can happen. So I had a client that bought an off-the-plan property. An off-the-plan property is a property that hasn't been constructed or titled yet. So think about the new estates in suburbia where they're selling land lots that haven't been constructed, or house and land packages. So we had a client that was interested in buying an off-the-plan, and we reviewed the contract for them. And what we discovered was there was a clause in the contract that required there was a clause in the contract that stated that if the client does not build, the purchaser does not build their house on that land lot within X period of time, I think at the time it was like 12 months after settlement, the developer can buy back the lot at less than the market price, and that the lender for the buyer, that lender needed to specify that in their mortgage documents as well. I can tell you almost as a guarantee, and any mortgage broker would tell you this as well, that a lender is not going to agree to that. And if the client had purchased that property and the lender picked up on that clause, they wouldn't actually fund the purchase. So because we got the contract reviewed before they bought, we were able to discover the clause, notify the broker as well as the client about that. In fact, we actually cut the whole review at that point and said, there's actually no point going any further, because you're not going to get finance on this purchase, and you need finance to buy a property. So that was a really good pickup for the client. And then the third scenario is, I don't know if you take a drive around Melbourne, you might see in some suburbs some really old brick buildings. Yeah. Some of those brick buildings, and it's not as common, but I still see it from time to time. Those brick buildings have what's called a stratum title. So when you buy an apartment or a flat in an old brick building or something, either you're buying a property with a title that's a strata title, so it has an established owners corporation that manages the common areas of the property. So you own your car park, you own your storage cage if there's a storage cage, and you own your unit. And then you've just got an owners corporation that manages all the common areas, hallways, lifts, etc., maintenance. But then you can also find a old flat that has what's called a stratum title. Now that's an earlier title whereby there's no established owners corporation. In fact, the Owners Corporation Act doesn't even come into it. And there is a company in place that owns the common areas. Right. So you actually own a share in the company. You don't actually own, say, the car space or something. You actually own a share in the company that owns a car space. And you'll own the unit, but just not the common areas that would otherwise come with the unit, like the car space or a storage cage.
The usual.
And and a lot of lenders don't like to lend on that sort of a title, or they won't lend beyond a certain percentage. Maybe it's 70%, for example, of the valuation. So that the bank gives them. So you might not actually get the funds that you need to be able to afford to buy the property, is what I'm saying. So a lot of clients get stuck on that. And if you actually haven't got a seasoned conveyancer inspecting, or a seasoned property lawyer like us inspecting the contract, there's always a risk that the person looking over the contract is going to miss that issue. Because yeah, you need to be experienced to understand what certain titles look like. So yeah, we were able to pick up on that, and as a result, the client decided to buy another property because he realized, after speaking to me and speaking to the broker, that he wasn't able to actually afford it because the lender was only prepared to lend 70%, and he needed a 90% loan to be able to afford to buy a property. So they're just some interesting scenarios where it always pays to get advice before you buy.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I quite like that because and thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, obviously people would have been paying so much money to get that advice or not, and then they would have to be paying additional 4,000, like you said, that person that you saved who would have been paying so much money to just have a view in the docklands, which maybe with time would also be closed by another high-rise building coming on the side, had that not been looked into. Now, I don't know if this goes in the way of a conveyancer or just me thinking, out loud. So in the area that we live in, they've had so much development happening, and it looks like it's things that was planned a long time ago, but the people that are in the line of where that development is happening are just obviously crying and having to detour and having to go around, their houses and use other people's driveways up until such construction is happening. See, when they're putting in the train stations, or they're putting in, expanding the roads, or beautifying the place, or confining the places and putting shopping centers in and around those areas, is that something that a conveyancer would also warn in advance before somebody makes a purchase, or is that something that is out of your jurisdiction?
No, definitely. So if there's any disclosures about planned amenities or planned infrastructure, that's something that we would definitely pick up on and advise a client about, because that's they're practical considerations that a lot of people take into account when deciding where they want to buy and where they want to live. A lot of first home buyers, for example, they like to buy to somewhere that to live, to raise a family. They might be getting married, or have recently married or something, and they're having a baby, and they're looking for a safe neighborhood, or a neighborhood where there's close amenities, close transportation and things like that. So if it's ever disclosed in the Section 32, we would absolutely advise clients around that, because, like I said, it is a practical consideration for lifestyle reasons, but also it's something people take into account when it comes to the value of the property over time, because being location is a big consideration on how much a property appreciates in value.
Absolutely. And that now ties into the statement that you said earlier on, that don't be worried about timing the market. You should just maybe worry about just getting in whenever you can, because time in the market is what actually then pays off a lot of dividends. Now, I can't thank you enough, Melissa, for the time that we spent on the call today. I mean, obviously, this is more than I bargained for. Even, you could have warned me to pack a lunch at least, because I didn't.
Sorry for the rant, guys.
Fantastic. No, that's absolutely amazing. Now, considering your tech focus, you've sort of a futuristic conveyancing firm, where do you see the future of conveyancing heading, and how is Conveyed sort of preparing for these changes?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I definitely see it becoming, I feel that there will be more and more conveyancers adopting a more digital business model. Absolutely. A more digital business model. Because the old school way of doing things especially with the introduction of AI. Like anyone that's capitalizing on AI to run their business are the ones that are going to be at the forefront in any industry, let alone conveyancing. So we're always very conscious of putting that into our business. You know, I'm always researching on new ways on how to do things more efficiently, using AI to better my customer experience. So any conveyancer that's forward thinking and applying that will definitely gain more market share over time for sure. Yeah, the old way of doing things will only last a certain amount. So you really have to be adaptable to change. So yeah, I think AI is going to change the world, but used ethically.
Well, as long as we are here and as long as we can still convey this message, let's do, what we can with the instruments and tools that we have, in order to help people do and have a
Yes.
happier existence. Now, Melissa, I can't thank you enough for joining us today and sharing your valuable insights, on the Online
Pleasure.
Prosperity Show today. Yeah.
Pleasure.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me. And if
Absolutely.
anyone needs to reach out, it's just convey.com.au. And you can just go on our website, leave an inquiry, and we'll be in touch.
Absolutely. I'll make sure that all those links are in the show notes. And also they will be scrolling through on the screen somewhere so that people can actually just pause and get to connect with you. And Melissa, it's quite clear that your passion and innovative approach makes a real difference in the lives of your clients, and especially the fact that you're dealing with Gen Y millennials that are already technologically, there. It's easy for them to then connect with what it is that you are doing. So thank you for paving the way to making life a whole lot easier, especially for the first home buyers out there. Now, for those that are watching right now, if you found this episode insightful, make sure you rewatch it, especially for the part where Melissa was talking about the tips for millennials. And I think that segment in and of itself is a showstopper in and of itself, because if you're going to be buying a property, it's one of those investments that you probably only do once if you're lucky. And so you want to make sure that you do it right, and you're going to be stuck with that mistake for the rest of your life. And that's not something that you would want to be grappling about when there's people like Melissa that can literally look at a document and save you a whole world of pain. And I will definitely be putting all the links so that you can get connected with Melissa. And just don't forget to subscribe to the Online Prosperity Show, because you never know who we're going to be bringing on the show, who's going to be dropping some major bombs that would actually save you a bundle. Now, until next time, keep prospering and good luck with your first property, and make sure you're using Conveyed to do that transaction. Bye for now.